Hey guys, Jocelyn here with Fantasia Elegance. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to make this very simple but elegant little wire wrapped motif here. It does work equally well for making anything from a pair of earrings to a very cute little bracelet if you link a whole bunch of them in a row, or even you can turn it into a very pretty kind of Elven inspired necklace. So it's a very versatile little design, and it's actually quite simple to make. So let's go ahead and dive right in. I do have, as always, in the description section below a list of the exact tools I'm using and where you can get them, as well as all the materials you'll need. So feel free to check that out down below. So for this smaller version of the design, which I used to make these earrings and this bracelet, we will be using some 20 gauge round dead soft wire and some 24 gauge round dead soft wire. I'll be using a copper that I purchased from MiraGrande.com. For these earrings I used sterling silver. Of course you can use anything you like. We will be hammering this design out a little bit, so I like to use a pure metal rather than something plated, although you can skip the hammering if you don't have that option available to you, and it should be just as pretty. It just won't look quite so flattened out on the ends of these little loops here, as you can see. If you wanted to make this slightly larger design for the necklace, you would want to use 18 gauge round dead soft wire with 22 gauge wire for the bindings on the inside there. So let's go ahead and cut our wire. We'll be starting with our 20 gauge, and for each of these little link designs you will need one piece that is 5 inches long. So let's go ahead and get that cut here. And for those of you in metric, you're looking at about 13 centimeters. So if you're doing a pair of earrings, you would cut 2 pieces of this. For the bracelet, for kind of an average sized adult female wrist, I did 4 of them in a row. And again, if you were going for the slightly larger design for the necklace, you would want to instead cut a 6-inch piece of wire, and in metric that would be about 15.5 centimeters. So we've got our 5-inch length of wire here. I'm going to pull out a ruler and we're going to mark a few spots on this. What we're going to do is mark the middle of our wire. So we're going to go at 2.5 inches. I'll just be using a fine tip Sharpie for this. And once we have that middle mark, we're going to go out on both sides and mark 5/8 of an inch out. So of course what that works out to is marking this at 1 7/8 inch, 2.5 inches, and then 3 1/8 inch. And if you were going for the larger necklace design, you would, on your 6-inch piece of 18 gauge wire, you would again mark the middle, so you'd be marking at 3 inches, and then you would go out 3/4 of an inch on both sides of that mark. But this is what we have here for our smaller version for the earrings. What we're going to do now is pull out our round nose pliers, and I'm going to raise my camera up a little bit here so I have more room to work. And we're going to grip at one of these outermost marks. I'm going to position the mark at the center of my round nose pliers, and I'm going to start wrapping this wire around my pliers, keeping that mark centered at the wrap that I'm creating, so that we're getting something like that. And I'm going kind of low on my pliers to make a wider loop. I'm just going to keep bringing these 2 tails around until I have kind of a teardrop shape, and that middle mark that we made is sitting under this wire tail. It's crossing right over it. Okay. We're going to go then and do the same thing on the other mark. Again, positioning that at the center of my pliers, and we're going to wrap both ends around it so that, again, that little mark is sitting at the center of this kind of teardrop shape that we're creating. So we have something like that, and then both of our tails are coming together in the center and running parallel with each other. I'm just going to refine this slightly to make sure it's symmetrical. As you can see here, my upper teardrop is a little bit larger and wider, so I'm kind of just going to spend a little bit of time refining this just to keep things pretty and symmetrical. I'm even going to switch over to my chain nose pliers to do that. I sometimes find it a little bit easier to control what I'm doing with these nice Zuron. They're actually marketed as tweezer nose pliers. So that we have something like that. And if you're curious for scale, this is measuring about 1 1/8 inch long from end to end. Alright, so our little shape is taking shape here. What we're going to do now is add those little loops at the center, as you can see on my finished earring. So to do that, pull out your round nose pliers, and I'm just going to squeeze them in here, position them right at the center, and start wrapping that little loop-de-loop in there. Okay? And to make this lay flat, I want to run these tails underneath these two parallel wires that we have. So as I form this tail, I'm going to pull, as I form this loop, I'm going to pull the tail below or underneath the design. So it's going behind from your perspective. And I want a fairly small little loop there. So we formed that, and then I'm going to grip the loop and just make sure that this tail is running nice and parallel with this edge of that teardrop shape. Okay, we'll do the same thing on the other side. Again, gripping nice and next to the center there. We're going to wrap this behind as we form our loop. I'm trying to make that new loop match so that everything is symmetrical. So you should have something like that. Now to finish this off, we're going to form these little tiny swirls on the inside using the tails of our wires. So I'm going to just trim this off so I have a nice flush end. I'm going to take the very tips of my round nose pliers where they're small as they can be. I'm going to go right on the tippy top of this tail, and I'm going to start curving it in towards the inside of our little teardrop shape that we made. I'm just going to keep curving that around in an open spiral until I run out of space. Okay, so that's sitting inside there like that. And we'll do the same thing with the other tail. Curving this on in, making it as nice and small of an open spiral as we can. So that we now have something like that. I am going to make those spirals, you can leave it as is if you like the look of it. I prefer for those inner spirals to be even a little bit smaller. And I had a bit of extra wire length built in just to give you guys some leeway if you made things a little different than me. So I'm going to trim off a little bit of each of these spirals and just tighten it up a little more just because I happen to like the look of these smaller spirals. But again, if you like them bigger, you can leave them how they were. So I'm just going to tighten those up a little bit more using, again, my Xeron tweezer nose pliers here, which are just great for getting in these tight little spaces. So this is what we have now after we refined that down a little bit. Now you can just go ahead to the next step at this point if you want. I am actually going to hammer this out a little bit because I like the more flattened out look. So let me pull out my bench block here. And I do need to refinish the surface of this, pardon how rusty it's looking. Let me know in the comments below if you'd be curious to see a video on how to actually take care of your steel bench block if it starts getting these rusty spots, how you can kind of rejuvenate it. I might do a tutorial on that as I fix up the surface of mine. But basically I'm just going to hammer the very edges of these little teardrop shapes we made. I might hit this spiral here a little bit, but I don't want to flatten that out too much. I really want to focus on the outermost portion of this design, so that is what I'm going to hammer out. So this is what we have after hammering. To finish this up, all we need to do is pull out our 24 gauge wire, and I'm going to put 3 little bindings just in the center here holding everything together. It holds together pretty well as is, but as you can see there's a little wiggle if I pull on it, and it can kind of move laterally that direction as well. So I just like to firm that up and really make sure that it's held together nicely. So again, taking our 24 gauge wire, and if you're doing the larger version, you'd be using the 22 gauge wire to make that necklace that I showed you earlier. We're going to cut a short length of this. Let's do about 2 inches, should be plenty here. Go ahead and do 2.5 if you're using that 22 gauge wire for the larger design. And I'm just going to bend this right in half. And then we're going to drop that over the center, going through both of these little side loops so that it lays on all those center wires. And then going to the back, I'm going to cross these tails over so that we can start placing those wraps in. I'm going to pull both ends nice and tight there. Make sure everything's snug as I go. And then I'm going to tuck these tails up through these loops in order to wrap it. So we'll do that on both sides. There we go. And then back to our front here, so that we now have 3 wraps laying next to each other. And then I'm going to take these tails back again to the back by going through the loops. And that is where we will finish off our ends. Okay, so there's our 3 little wraps in the center. If we flip over to the back here, we're going to trim these ends off, and I'm going to do it in such a way that they are not visible from the front. So we'll snip that one there using my Zuron micro shear flush cutters. Trim that one there. And then you want to push those down kind of into the space on the back here. So that's our basic design, and as I said at the start, you can use this to make all kinds of different jewelry. Of course, if you wanted to turn it into earrings, you could very simply add a little ear wire on the end. I did opt to add some little dangle beads below these here, some little teardrop briolettes. If you need a tutorial on how to attach teardrop briolettes with some different styles to, ear wires or whatever you're using, I do have a tutorial on that on my channel. I also have tutorials on how to make your own ear wires, so go ahead and check those out if you're curious. As I said before, you can also turn this into a bracelet. I just very simply connected the links using little 6mm pearls here with a wrapped loop on both sides. And then to finish it off, I used a little handmade wire wrapped clasp, which again, I have a tutorial on this exact style on my channel. I liked how this kind of decorative swirly one sort of went with the overall feel of these loopy little elegant designs that we made. And then for the necklace, I did use that larger version of the design that I was giving you the directions for all along. And what I did was I used some 4mm inner diameter jump rings at the bottom of those, and then a third one connecting those, and I looped the little teardrop briolette wrapped loop through the bottom of that. So again, we've got 3 jump rings there connecting everything, and then the teardrop briolette hanging from that. And then I just added some chain and a standard store-bought clasp. I like how this one hangs at about 20 inches. You can do whatever you like, of course. So here are all the variations together. They're very pretty on their own, or quite stunning as a set, as you can see. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, found it helpful and easy to follow. Leave me a comment below if so, or if you have ideas for future tutorials you might like to see. I also wanted to thank everyone for their continued support of my channel and their patience with my long hiatus that I've been taking here. For those of you who didn't see my post earlier and didn't already know, my husband and I did have our first baby, a little boy, so he has been keeping me quite busy. Kind of had a rough start there with some bad colic, which we found out was actually silent reflux. But he's doing well, we're both doing well, and I am hoping to find more time now to continue putting out new tutorials for y'all. Hope everyone's staying safe and well. I will catch you in the next video. Happy crafting!